former Deputy President of the country, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, joining us now via our video link as we continue to reflect on efforts by the Pope to end a number of social ills in the world, including poverty. Former Deputy President, thanks very much indeed for your time. It's so great to have you on the SABC News channel. And you know, Pope Francis is still being remembered as somebody who really went out of his way to vouch for the most marginalized. And I know that you in some ways have been part of that effort after being given a task by the Vatican yourself.
Yes, good morning, Ayanda and the listeners. Pope Francis indeed really cared for the poor. My first meeting with him was at the Vatican when he convened us to discuss access to affordable internet for the poor. He wanted us to think about how we as Catholics can support either governments or the United Nations to make that possible. Within the Vatican, there was a group that was working on that, and then he asked us from different parts of the world to come and make our input. And then my next encounter with him was working on the relations between the Christians and the Muslims. And he had been driving a program in the world with Muslim leaders to close the gap between these people of faith, and we would award organizations with initiatives that are bringing these people of faith together every year, and we would go and brief him about who we are recommending could win, and he would be so interested in knowing the details of the people that we were recommending. So he really had time for these issues that affected the poorest of the poor.
Yeah, you know, conflicts around the world, it seems, were a source of great pain for him. And in fact, we're still running visuals of his different interactions with world leaders. And we've seen him quite literally kiss the feet of leaders from South Sudan in an effort to try plead with them that they really work to ensure that there's peace in that part of the world.
Yeah, and actually he was also a leader at a very complicated time. You know, climate change, wars, COVID, the wars between peoples of faith, now Gaza. So it was not easy. And of course, sexual violence within the church. So he always had to take a stand on these very controversial issues. And I was glad that when he had an opportunity, he did take a stand and help the church to move forward on these issues.
Yeah. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard you say there that we as Catholics, as you're describing the task that you were given, so I'm going to presume that you identify as a Catholic yourself. And I'm only prefacing that with my next question, because I wonder what this meant for you personally. I know how big a deal it is for members of the church to interact with an individual referred to as the Holy Father. And if you had that opportunity yourself as a person of faith, it must have been a bit of a highlight.
Oh, definitely a highlight for me. I am a Catholic. So we always hold the Pope in very high esteem. And I come from a very Catholic family, so it really gave me a status in the family that I have met the Pope. But also he was just such an easy person to interact with. I remember when we met him at the Vatican, it was over breakfast, and he was really irritated because he didn't want to eat what they were suggesting he eats. He was trying to find a way of eating the things he likes. But of course, because of his health, people around him were very strict about making sure that he eats healthy.
Yeah, and we've heard
so
already.
This is the normal thing that anyone can do.
Yes, absolutely. I was about to say we've heard how human he was in many respects, and I suppose that's a case in point.
Yeah.
Another thing that has really stood out was how many people have remembered him as a person who refused to reduce God to a magician. You know, this was an individual who was obsessed with bringing the church to the people and really demystifying dogma and tradition of the church. And I wonder to what extent you reckon that's going to be a big part of how people remember him.
Well, I hope that will be the case, because he also had this thing of poor people as the representative of Christ. So you don't have to be a high-profile member of a church or an influencer in the church. Anybody, very grassroots, anyone sitting in the pews, and not even in church for that matter, in that person, there is an image of Christ. And he really tried to make us appreciate everybody and anybody.
Yeah, I'm sure you are watching with great interest, I beg your pardon, what's taking place in the Vatican at the moment. And I'm asking my next question for you to respond, both as a world leader yourself and as a member of this institution. When you try place where you hope the church is headed next, what comes up for you? I mean, who are you hoping would be able to emerge? And I'm not asking for a name in particular, but what kind of focus, perhaps, should be my question, do you hope that the Vatican will place as the church charts the next chapter of its existence?
Well, I think I hope that we get an African Pope. This time I will not hide my bias. And but also I hope that we will have a Pope that will take the church further. I think for me, it's still very so that we don't ordain women in the Catholic Church. I could have been a priest, by the way. But it would be interesting to take that debate further. We've seen a lot of changes in Pope Francis's time. Women playing significant, taking significant roles within the church, but still, there's still a long way to go. And I hope that the new Pope will address that. But also just making the church to be a comforter for everyone. That is still very important. And I see in my own church here in Rivonia how much my church is inclusive and brings everybody together. We would like to see that happening everywhere where the church is present.
Yeah, you know, there was a synod of the family that was held during Francis's papacy, and in many ways there were hopes that around that time he'll continue pushing, you know, the boundaries of what the church understands about God and, you know, all manner of conversations around same-sex relations and women. But of course, I suppose he can only do so much given the time that he had. Dr.
Yes.
Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka.
Yes.
I'm sure, do you want to respond to that?
No. I'm just saying that I also recognize that he also had to be careful not to push so hard that he gets a rebellion that is beyond what he could actually manage. So it's all about being strategic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair enough. For your reflections, we are truly grateful. So thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. The former Deputy President of the country there, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, giving us her own reflections in the wake of the passing of Pope Francis.